cross-linking outcomes.
I thank AIS and Dr. Rohit sir for giving me this opportunity. At the outset, I have no financial disclosures on whatever I'm going to speak in this talk. So what are the most, whenever we do cross-linking, we know why we do a cross-linking in a progressive keratoconus. But what are our major fears after we have done a cross-linking, and what do we need to explain the patients? That they might have a failure post-cross-linking, there are 7% chances, or the haze or the scar post-cross-linking, which we are going to see. So these are not the dreaded outcomes for the patients, but the doctor as well. So my talk is going to be divided into 4 parts, starting with haze. So there can be 2 outcomes, a good healing response where the keratocytes have remodeled well, so there will be no haze. But if there is an irregular haze, it can be due to a lot of molecular factors, the genetic factors, or it can be because the keratocyte dysfunction is also there. So how will it affect our outcomes? Whenever we do a cross-linking, there is going to be a haze, which we are going to predict, but if we wait and watch for over 6 months to 1 year, the haze is going to reduce. So not only the patient, but the doctor also needs to be patient that, you know, the haze is going to come down, and we need to wait and watch for it. How is it going to affect the outcomes? We have published our work in IJO in 2015, where it has known that if there is haze, the densitometry on the Pentacam or any other machines will be higher. And if it is higher, you might see a pseudo progression post cross-linking. So whenever there is an haze, be very watchful on how you see your scans and how you read your scans. And if there is any progression you see, just wait and watch, keep the patient on a regular follow-up. And once the haze has reduced, you see the outcomes, and definitely it will be better. Can we predict or prevent this haze clinically, pre-operatively? Are there any factors? Yes, there are. If the patient is a contact lens wearer, or if patient has any burning sensation, irritation pre-operatively, it is or a high ocular surface disease index scoring. It is a sign that yes, the patient has a inflammation pre-operatively, so we will treat the local inflammation with steroids. Any systemic immunity disorders like acne or any OCPs or any pediatric disorders or any ocular or systemic allergies, that are also the signs that it will lead to inflammation post-operatively, and it can lead to more haze. Also, vitamin D, Dr. Prerna has spoken about any vitamin D deficiency preoperatively or any keloid tendency in these patients are bound to have haze or a scar postoperatively. So this is how we can predict preoperatively, or the scoring, few of the points of the scoring from Prerna, and we can prevent it, treat it preoperatively, and then take the patient for surgery. So if it's an allergy, or anything, we treat the allergy, reduce the eye rubbing, treat local and systemic causes of inflammation with topical steroids, short course of cyclosporin, lubricants, anti-allergics. If there is any systemic immunoglobulin levels are high or more than 300, we do it for all our patients, pediatric plus adults. Do a patch test, and if they are sensitized to any of the allergens, do a desensitization along with an immunologist, and then take the patient up for surgery. And any vitamin D or B12 deficiency, we should start the patient on all vitamin D or B12 supplements before taking the patient up for surgery, and then do a cross-linking. This is a small algorithm on how you can prevent it. Also, this is what we follow in our clinics, the history, the clinical examinations, and the lab investigations pre-operatively before we take the patients up for surgery. What can we do intraoperatively? A lot of these keratoconus patients might not have secretions, but the epithelial tightness, how we remove the when we are doing a manual removal of the epithelium, if it is loose, it means that there is more inflammation, and that is a sign that you need, post-operatively, you need to treat this patient with a higher potent steroid like a prednisolone, and it should also be for a longer time, for about 12 weeks. And the immunomodulators like cyclosporin should also be given for a longer time for these patients. How do we manage post-operative haze? As I said, the surface active potent steroids for a longer time, 8 weeks or longer. Cyclosporin 0.05%, 6 months or longer. If there are any children with severe allergies, we do an immune workup like a patch test, and if there is any positive in that, we treat it with an immunologist. We treat the allergies part as well. Serum vitamin D level, post-operatively also, the patients are continued according to the WHO guidelines, because this will help in reducing both the haze and inflammation. Second thing is post-cross-linking. If there is a progression, there is a known fact that 7% of the patients do have a failure rate post-cross-linking. Why does this happen? If there is any inflammation prior to surgery, we do treat it and then take the patient up for surgery and do a cross-linking. But even after cross-linking, if the inflammation, eye rubbing or untreated allergy persists, it is going to lead to low levels of LOX and collagen, and it can lead to failure of cross-linking. So how do we proceed? Again, we take care of all the factors I have spoken about. Ideally, we should be doing a tear test or a biomarker test or confocal microscopy, but it is not practical for a lot of us. Simple test, OSDI scoring, which is a free questionnaire. If it's high, it means there is inflammation, treat inflammation. And any systemic factors, treat them and then proceed. When do we do a repeat cross-linking is a very, very, very dilemma on when we do it. So failure rate, when do we define it? If there are more than 3 points of steepening, more than 1 diopters in the cone area, it's known as progression, and it should be beyond 1 year and more. Look for haze. If there is a haze, your scans might be affected. The repeatability of the scans might be affected. So before commenting on failure, just look at haze clinically. Wait for 24 to 30 months before deciding whether you would like to do a repeat cross-linking or not, because the keratocytes are remodeling and the wound healing can happen for 6 months or beyond also. Yet again, if it is progressing, check if the repeatability of the scans are good. If yes, rule out any systemic or local inflammation. If yes, treat the cause and then reassess. And then if still progressing, a lot of times this patient gets stable, so then you can keep them on observation. But if they're still progressing, you can go ahead with a repeat cross-linking. The next question is, this is not like post-operatively, but this is pre-operatively, a thin cornea. How would you do a thin cornea? Cross-link a thin cornea. A lot of times now it is believed that if the thickness is less than 450 or less than 400, we do an epi-on cross-linking or an intax followed by cross-linking. Or if it is still an advanced disease with or without with scarring, you do a repeat a penetrating or a lamellar keratoplasty. But what if the scarring is not present? So there are multiple techniques available and published. These are the techniques, but they still have their own drawbacks, and the outcomes are not yet very nice. So if we want to cross-link a thinner cornea below 400 without scarring, what would you do? So what we have done is we have taken a lead from Farhad Hafezi et al. And his work, where what he has done is he has modulated the fluence of your UVA light. Depending on 3 millivolts or 9 millivolts, whatever protocol you are using, and then he has modulated according to the thickness of the cornea post removal of the epithelium. And what we did was, but it is a very complicated math, and you cannot practically do it in a clinic. So what we did with our team was we developed a next UVA calculator for thin corneas less than 400. And this is a very simple algorithm. This is the link to the app which we have created. According to the thickness of the stroma after removing the epithelium, if you are using a 3 millivolt or a 9 millivolt protocol, you can actually see what fluence, what time of the energy to use. If it's a 9 millivolts, for example, if it's a 340 micron cornea, you use the UVA light for 7.3 minutes, and if you are using a 3 millivolts, you can use it for 21.95 minutes. So this is how you can go to this link and find out if you want to cross-link a thin cornea. This is just an example on how we do it. This is a pre-op 390. Once we remove the epithelium, after epithelium removal, for example, the thickness is 50 microns, so it will be 340 microns after removal of epithelium. We go back to this link where we have the chart. So as I said, for 9 millivolts it would be 7.3, and for 3 millivolts it would be 21.9. We use a 20 accelerated protocol, so riboflavin drops for 20 minutes followed by the next UVA light. So the next part would be, is there an importance of epithelium when you are judging your cross-linking outcomes? The answer is yes, because what happens when we do a cross-linking and when the epithelium has healed and there is more remodeling happened, the epithelium might be it might have healed in a different way, and the thickness over different zones might be different. So whenever we judge the outcomes, we don't know whether we are actually seeing the true outcome or whether it's the epithelial hypertrophy or the epithelial thinning which is telling us whether they are real outcomes or not. And this is what happens, like this is the preoperative, the Bowman's layer, the stromal layer, and the corneal curvature. Once we do a cross-linking, yes, the epithelium grows back, as I said, and sometimes if the epithelium healing or remodeling is not well, then it might lead to a epithelial hypertrophy, and it might give a pseudo this thing. So what we did was we did a study where we have removed the epithelium and seen what's the flattening at the Bowman's area. And a lot of times because of epithelial hypertrophy, we do not get the true outcomes. And we have seen that at Bowman's level, the flattening is actually 55% more than the anterior surface. Thank you.
So to sum up on her talk, what is important here is that the loose, when you're actually taking the epithelium during your cross-linking, you have to be very mindful about how your hands are moving, because if it's very loose, that means you're going to end up with a much more tougher outcomes. That means you'll have more haze, more pain, more delayed wound healing. So be very careful, and that's why many times when patients I'm very keen that I want to know the outcome. I take the epithelium myself and I really document on my file, was the epithelium which got removed came out easily or it was very tight. Because tighter the epithelium, the better the outcome of post-operatively, because the healing is very good. You're looser the epithelium because there is a lot of collagen there which are completely removed the epithelium off. And I change my steroids. I use a stronger steroid for a longer time if the epithelium has come out loose. That works very well when I was doing a PRK manually also. The second one is stopping contact lens in keratoconus patient is very important, because